Welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast, hosted by Dave Roberts. Humanity possesses a unique skill, the ability to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. This podcast embraces that ability, offering learning opportunities through conversations with extraordinary guests. Dave aims to leave a positive mark on individuals around the world. So before you dive into today's episode, please share this podcast with your network, including friends, family, and colleagues. And please consider leaving a rating or review. Your support makes all the difference.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, and today it is my pleasure to have as my guest Jim Boad. Jim helps purpose-driven individuals start, launch, and scale successful group homes and sober living facilities without the guesswork, overwhelm, or unnecessary setbacks. He provides step-by-step coaching, templates, tools, and real-world strategies for launching homes that are both impactful and financially sustainable. Jim, welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast. I have been looking forward to our conversation for some time now.
I'm excited to be here.
And I think initially we met through Steve Ramona. Steve is that super podcast connector who seems to have a knack for introducing really, really appropriate guests to just the right podcast host. He introduced us. We had an introductory call, found that we aligned on quite a few levels, and we find ourselves recording our episode today. And also got to give a shout out to Candace Snyder as well, too, because I know you were on her podcast recently. Candace is another one of my favorite podcast hosts. She has the Passion, Purpose, and Possibilities podcast, and she and Steve have both been very supportive, of my efforts as a podcaster, and also through sending me some really dynamite guests.
Yeah, they are amazing.
Yes. So, Jim, whenever you're ready, I got some questions for you.
Let's do it.
All right. First question is, tell our audience about the experiences that have shaped your life path and your life passions today.
Absolutely. So getting into the sober living, something that really shaped that was my childhood, my early childhood. I definitely had some heavy drug addict, alcoholic parents, and I definitely got to see a lot of ways I didn't want to live life. It took me a very long time to be able to actually take some action on that, because my life path wasn't super clear. I joined the military right out of high school, Army. I loved it. I met my wife while I was stationed in New York, and I quickly got out of the Army because I wanted to spend time with her and not be in that. And then I quickly got into real estate investing. I started flipping homes, and I've done that for the past 25 years. And now for the past 4 years, I have been growing sober living homes. And now for the past year, I've been teaching people how to start and scale their own sober living homes. So that's the really quick version of it.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot more, particularly growing up in an alcoholic household, that had to be some very challenging dynamics to navigate day by day.
Absolutely.
And I know probably as a product of your experiences, your upbringing, you've developed a passion for sober living homes. Why particularly that aspect of level of care for recovering substance users? What drew you to doing that specifically?
What really drew me to it is the fact that it's one of the most underlooked aspects of recovery. Everyone focuses on getting into a program, getting into an inpatient clinic. But what happens after that? Where does life go after that? You just get released back onto the streets, and then you go right back to where you were and start doing the same things you were doing. Just from what I have seen in my experience with this, when people come into these sober living homes that are run properly, because all sober living homes are not created equal. Yep. But when they come into a properly run sober living home, and really the more time they can have there, the better. But when they get 6+ months, their ability to really go back and seize their life and take the world on and stay sober is just so drastically increased. And this is just so underlooked from every aspect. As an investor, most people aren't looking at starting sober living homes. as someone who wants to help people recover, they also are not looking at sober living homes. They're looking more at rehab.
Yeah, and rehab's only part of the story, Jim. I worked as an addictions professional for 27 years and was a clinical supervisor. And the most important piece for me with rehab, you could stabilize symptoms, you can give them some basic, skills that they need to take out, they could take out with them. But the issue is if they are going back into the same environment that reinforce their drug use, we're just setting them up for relapse and they're setting themselves up for relapse. Resources have always, the availability of resources have always been an issue ever since I started in the 80s. And then I retired in 2012, is that there are always more individuals with substance use challenges who need a treatment than the resources to provide it. And especially for individuals who are going into uncertain circumstances, community residences are a really nice, structured, but yet realistic alternative to just going out into the streets and just winging it. You have support, you have 24-hour staff, and you have access to AA meetings, connections with or contracts with outside counseling agencies, and you have the support of other recovering individuals who are struggling with the same issues as you. And that is so important whenever you're talking about recovery from substance use or transcending any type of life challenges, that importance of having a community that's going to support your growth.
Absolutely.
So tell us about what you offer interested individuals who are interested in your group Home Accelerator program. And do these individuals have to have specific qualifications to be deemed eligible for your program?
They do not. Really, what I do is exactly what you said in the intro is I will help people from A to Z start and scale sober living homes. And I help people rent homes. I help connect people with investors that will buy homes and let someone operate it. I help people that buy a home and operate it themselves. And, that's really 100% what I do. And the way I run my coaching is I actually run all of my coaching through a school group. So it's not an individual one-on-one coaching. You're in there and you're kind of getting the experience of everybody else that's going through the same process with you. Lots of good questions come up, good connections get made in these types of environments as opposed to the one-on-one. And it's been amazing and powerful. I really, really have love that I get to expand my reach of wanting to do homes because I could never do as many homes as I could help people do. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't do it yourself, but you can train others to do it.
absolutely.
And that gets the message out there. And your message becomes their message. And that's how that's how it gets multiplied. And that's how roots in all communities, get grown and get planted. So how many sober living homes do you have? And is it just in the state of Washington or have you expanded your reach now?
I only am going to own homes in Washington. I'm building some more, and then I'm going to kind of stop with the building of my homes and keep those running. But then I'm going to focus a lot more on helping other people. So I had 14 homes, but what I've been doing is scaling them down as I build my bigger homes because now I have less homes with actually more beds. So I've downsized to 5 homes, but I actually helped more people than I did when I had 14.
Yeah, that makes sense because, if you have less homes, but like you said, you have more beds, you're helping more people.
Absolutely.
And that's important. There's so many individuals out there who need treatment. And unfortunately, it's getting to be younger and younger and younger that we're seeing that are being diagnosed with substance use issues. And they need support. They need some structure, particularly after rehab.
Absolutely. I'm actually working with a guy that just signed on today, and that is his focus. He's focusing on youth recovery housing. So it's a big deal.
Particularly with the opioid crisis, that has hit. I remember, Jim, in the last few years of my tenure working for the state, we were getting young opioid addicts that were probably 18 to 24. And it wasn't the exception, it was the rule. But again, back in the 70s, the average age of diagnosis, I think, was like, late 40s or something like that for alcoholism. And then I think as it progressed, I think maybe the 80s, 90s, it was 25. Now you're looking, and I've been out of the field for a while, but if you're looking at 18-year-old addicts coming into treatment, they're being diagnosed at 18 or sooner.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Some of the drugs that were released out there, the Oxycontins and things that were these alternatives that weren't going to be addictive drugs that came in I don't want to call it a sexier form, but opioids before was heroin, and heroin was kind of a harder drug for people to get into than a pill form drug that I can go get prescribed to me very easily from a doctor because I have sciatic pain.
Yeah.
Oh, it really changed. It changed that drug environment drastically.
And it did. And I think most individuals who become opioid addicts, or a lot of them, become addicted to pain-killing medication first because of chronic back pain. They double up on the prescription, and then they build up a tolerance, and then they become addicted. And there are some addicts that I talked to, Jim, that didn't like heroin. They shot up once, they got nauseated, and they didn't do it again.
Yeah.
So, but now with you said the sexier opioids, and particularly now with fentanyl, which is a sure death sentence to anybody who takes it, that's becoming more of a challenge that you need to address, that you and other individuals who are in the business now are facing, and need to find some alternatives to deal with that. And particularly having structured sober housing with sober supports in place can be a way to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What is now the group Home Accelerator program? Does it have specific components to it? Is it like is it a book? What do I get if I want to sign up for that?
Absolutely. Well, I actually do have a book out there, Group Home Accelerator, on Amazon. Shameless plug. What the most important part about what you get when you jump into my Group Home Accelerator program through school is you're getting direct access. So we get on weekly, and there's different tiers of it, but we get on weekly and we do Q&As. We just did our Q&A today. And then, we also get to schedule time with me. I'll do one-on-one time with people when they need it. And I try to do as much group time as we can because there's always that common thread.
Yeah.
But really, there's only a few key steps to this. I mean, it sounds super easy because it's simple. It's just not as easy as you'd like it to be. So I teach people how to identify if their area is going to be a good area for this right away. And as you're doing that, you kind of already start building your pipeline. So people will bring you the clients and send people into your home. And you can do most of these steps before you even have a home identified.
Yeah.
So those are some of the most important things, because I don't want somebody to go buy a home and then find out there's just no need for this in my area, which is rare. There's a need for this almost everywhere right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And by the way, there's no shameless plugs on the program, so you can certainly at the end of the show, I'm going to ask you to plug yourself. So
perfect.
So you're good. You're ahead of the curve on that one, Jim. So what has been the response to the communities you service to the sober living homes that you train others to build? Is it mostly positive you're getting, or is it mostly positive?
It almost never starts positive. Especially with neighbors, they have a preconceived notion of what this is. They think that we're bringing drug addicts and criminals into their neighborhood. And, I don't want to live across the street from that. But once they realize, especially with a well-run sober living home, we become the best neighbors that they have. We have curfews. We have chore lists. Yards are always clean. Garbage is always pulled out and pulled back when it's supposed to be. There's no fights in the streets. We are blessed still to have the power to remove people from these homes when we need to. So that way, if there are bad actors there, I can actually remove them, as opposed to if I put a tenant just as a landlord into a property and they're a bad tenant. Here in Washington, it's almost impossible to remove them without taking them to court and spending tens of thousands of dollars and them not paying rent and damaging the home. And their bad behavior just goes completely unpunished. And there's just nothing I can do about it as the landlord, because I'm basically handcuffed. Where we just put out great neighbors now. And once people understand that, they definitely change their tune. And especially when they start seeing how much we help, because we do a lot in our program. We do so much more than just give people a bed. We have programs right now that we just started with our nonprofit, where we're starting charity events, where we will do job training for people. I just sent a couple of guys to Flagger School, So they're certified now, so they can go out there and get a state job to stand on the side of the road with the flagger signs. One guy got hired almost instantly. We put people that we've got a welding class that we're sending people to. I'm working on getting with a CDL company so we can get people CDLs so they can be long haul truckers. So just so many cool opportunities. We're starting a small cab company in our town that's going to be run by our recovery guys. So just it's so much more that you can give once you get into this than just a bed to someone.
Well, the other thing, the reason I asked that question is, I know that there's a stigma attached to addiction. There's a stigma attached to mental illness. A lot of time, because of the labels of addict, because of the labels of mentally ill, people are seen as their label. When in reality, and I have worked with many, many, many individuals who had substance use issues over the years. Let me tell you something, Jim. These were bright, creative, sensitive, good people that they went astray because they couldn't put down or stop dancing with the drug of their choice. And a lot of times it took 3, 4, 5 presentations for treatment before they finally surrendered to the fact that their way wasn't going to help them achieve their life goals. But bad decisions and behavior that is seen to be bad doesn't make bad people. And when you separate the behavior, you treat the behavior separated from the person. You never sacrifice the self-esteem of an individual when you're treating the behavior. That's two separate things.
Absolutely.
So what is the secret to turning a profit from sober living homes? During my time as an addictions professional, there were so many budget cuts in the state. There were a lot of community residences, as we called them back then, that were always concerned about budget cuts, concerned about service provision, couldn't stay open. So what's the secret?
I do have to say, over these last 4 years that I've been in this, there has been a lot of funding. There's a lot that has come up for this. I mean, like, I know even here in Washington, there were a lot of those class action opioid lawsuits that there were billions of dollars that went into funding these things, these types of programs. These, and also like true, because just so we're clear, there's recovery where people go and they actually get clean. And then when they come to me, they're coming to me after recovery. They're coming to me clean. And now it's time to keep them sober. Yeah. So, the biggest secret though is you got to keep your beds full. That's the simple one. But that's also why we're working on things, because we're really working hard to bulletproof ourselves from budget cuts and stuff like that. That's why we have our nonprofit and we offer people scholarships, because when their money runs out, sometimes they're not ready to go back to work yet, because they might be a server and they have to handle alcohol and they're not really ready to go back into that field. So sometimes people will be with us for 3, 4, 6 months and not have a job. Plus, when they're coming to us, they have lots of obligations. They're going to lots of AA classes or NA classes, and they've got check-ins that they need to do, and they've got inpatient things that they have to do. So their schedules are kind of, they're very busy doing lots of things, working on their sobriety. So, that's why we really want to be able to keep them as long as we can in these homes, because it's not, hey, I came out of recovery and I'm healed. The healing never really stops. That's why an addict's kind of always an addict.
Yeah, they're always in recovery. I always thought there was a difference between acceptance and surrender. I mean, I've talked to a lot of individuals who have relapsed, and they were just acceptance, but surrender means that you have to, it's one day at a time, and you take a look at that. Any misstep could set you up for relapse. I think the other thing as well, too, is you mentioned keeping the beds full, and that's always, we dealt with bed utilization rates. We had to have like 90% of our beds full at all times. But the thing that I think, and I'm sure you talk to individuals who want to help you train to build sober living homes and to operate sober living homes, is that if you have a quality admission process and criteria, the bed utilization rate is going to take care of itself. I think the problem becomes is when you're looking at the bottom line first and you're just taking anybody, it's not going to work, because you're going to be like a hamster spinning in this wheel. You're going to be discharging en masse, and you're going to be going into that cycle of just, let's keep the beds full, without looking at whether or not these individuals are appropriate for services. and can operate under the structure of a sober living home.
And we absolutely turn people away. It's in the beginning, it's one of the hardest things to do, but it's also how kind of responding to what else we do and how we keep bed full. You do have to market. So we do, but marketing is a little different. It's not sending out flyers. I'm not marketing to individuals. I'm marketing to inpatient drug clinics. I'm marketing to places that are helping people get sober. And it's a constant thing. A lot of people want to send one email, or they start getting a few referrals from a place and they think that that's all they have to do. We're constantly touching base. We're letting all of these different places know how many beds we have available when they come up. We're letting them, we keep in touch with them about the people that they're working with. There's the relationships that you have to build and constantly maintain as well. So.
Yeah, and you start bringing in those outside agencies and make them a part of the process. They know what you're looking for. You're going to get quality referrals.
Absolutely. And that really matters, because you can't take people in that are actively using. You can't take people in that don't want to follow the rules. So,
yeah. And I think one of the things that I think agencies need to be aware of is, you don't think about the bottom line first. Think of the quality of your admission process first. The better utilization rate is going to take care of itself.
Absolutely. When we're helping people, we will always get helped.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. The other thing I like is that your program is simple. There's simple steps, because I know there's an old AA saying, keep it simple, stupid. And, sometimes the more steps that you have to a process, the more confusing it could be. And I don't know, is that a product of your military training, if I may ask, that you just learned to keep it simple, keep the processes simple, understandable, so that you could complete whatever objectives you were assigned to complete?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought so. I mean, I've been around. I got good friends that have been in the military, and I worked with individuals who've been in the military. They always talk to me about keeping things simple, keeping things streamlined, so that the people that you're charged to work with understand the mission, understand what needs to be done. So that point hit me. I said, I like you already because it's a simple, streamlined process. There's nothing complicated about it.
Absolutely.
Well, that's the way we make it relatable too. So, Jim, what long-term impact do you hope your Group Accelerator program will have on the communities that have embraced or will embrace the idea of sober living homes?
It's really, it's about getting the people that are coming into those homes stabilized and then back out there to be the best selves they can be. Like, really, nothing feels better to me than when someone's leaving our home because they're going to get a rental of their own. Now they've got a car, they've got a job, they have a boyfriend or a girlfriend after they're ready for that. Like, those are the things that make you feel so cool. I get a lot of people that come to me with teeth issues, and when they get new teeth and you just see a completely different person, everything is different. They're hiding behind their hat and they're not talking to you. And then they're smiling at you and saying, I got a job. It's the most rewarding thing that I ever see. And it's what I want to have other people be able to see and be the person that's getting them to that place. And it's really cool that I can have a little fingerprint on it by maybe showing them how to start and scale these. So,
yeah, and, the thing is that when you hear from somebody who you've worked with and they're still sober, and they thank you for that, they're grateful for it, that keeps you going, because I tell my students at Utica University, if you're going to work with addiction, don't think this is going to be a linear process. It isn't, because you're going to be working with individuals who may not get it the first time in treatment, may not get it the second time in treatment. There's going to be frustrations. There's going to be challenges. But when they finally break through, and when they finally break through, you're going to see them, just like you described the guy that got new teeth and was just smiling. Once they get it, they're going to credit you to be part of the process, as being part of the process. And when that happens, you can say, boy, I was a part of this person's recovery story. And that's the greatest gift that you can get. The other thing is I keep a gratitude folder, and I kept that when I was working for the state of New York. And there were times that I would question and said, geez, am I really making a difference? And then I get, back in the day, we had snail mail. I'd get a letter from somebody saying, thank you for what you've done for me. And, I'm still sober. Thank you for the influence you had in my life. And, whenever I'm having a bad day, I just look at that. And, and that's the thing that makes working with recovering individuals so gratifying, is watching the transformation. But you have to get through the unpretty stuff first.
Oh, you do indeed.
You
It
know,
is pretty cool. We own a few local businesses. We own a local restaurant as well. And my wife and I were in there having dinner the other night, and she said to me, "Do you realize that every single person in this building is in one of our recovery homes? Like, that worked there. So all of the back of the house, the front of the house, it was kind of surreal. It's like, you're right. You really are. This is amazing." So pretty cool, fun stuff when you can give back like that.
well, and particularly in doing that, you are every person that comes out of your sober recovering homes that integrate back into the community, are productive citizens. It's one more person who's going to break the stigma with alcoholism. It's going to have individuals look at alcoholism and other drug use differently, to realize that no, it's not all or nothing. There are success stories. There are
Yes.
people that die from this disease, but there are people that learn to recover, and there are people that thrive and they live. And that's what we have to look at. It isn't just, and also the other thing, and I've said this, it's also the in-between stuff. You could have an individual who comes to you to sober living, and I'm sure you've seen this, where they've had 10, 15 prior years of sobriety. They've done some amazing service work in the 12-step fellowship, and they relapse. So does that eliminate the 15 years of good that they did? No. It just means that they had a misstep. They're back in treatment to say, okay, I need to get back on track. Let's see what I missed the last time I was in treatment. Let's see what that missing piece is. Let's incorporate it so that I can re-engage in recovery again. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Jim, you've left us with some really, really great stuff today, but I got a couple more questions for you. So,
All right.
first question is, if you could leave our listeners with one ultimate teaching or takeaway today, what would that be?
Oh, the biggest thing I always try to impart on everyone and leave with everyone is it's about just take some action. And imperfect action is the perfect action to always take. So if you want to start doing sober living homes, or you want to start group homes, you need to just start taking some sort of action. Start making calls to inpatient drug clinics, start looking for a house, even just getting onto Zillow and starting to dream, even if you're not qualified yet. There's always some sort of action you can take. And everybody's always, oh, once I get to here, I'll do this. Cause I did it for years too. I've wanted for 25 years since I started investing. I've always wanted to do something that was giving back more than just, I'm going to make money and I'm going to do this. And it took me 20 plus years to follow my own best advice.
Hmm.
So you just got to take imperfect action and trust that things are going to go exactly where they should. So,
Yeah, and they usually do. Even though we may not see it at that particular time, it usually does happen that way. So, one other thing I wanted to ask you before we close, and this just occurred to me, is there like a particularly memorable interaction that you've had with somebody in recovery that is memorable to you, that really just reinforce you that, boy, I'm in the right business right now?
I do have many of them, and the one that still sticks with me the most is probably one of my first. I think he was the third guy that came into one of my houses, and he was actually the guy that I was kind of talking about earlier with the teeth. When he finally was ready to leave, he stayed with us just about a year, and really rebuilt his life, got a job, got things going. And when he left us, he was getting into his truck that he just put a new motor in, and he did it himself, and he had this great sense of accomplishment with that big beautiful smile. He was actually getting ready to drive back to the East Coast to connect with his family that he hadn't seen since he was about 14 years old, when he left on train hopping across the country, because he was a drug addict from 14 years old and on, and he was in his mid 30s, and this is the longest he's ever been sober since he was 14 years old. And not only that, he got to go back and reconnect with his fractured family. I mean, it was just everything you would want for somebody. They got themselves sober, they got themselves productive, then they reconnected and are about to mend with all of the people that they hurt and alienated themselves from. I mean, I'm welling up already just talking about it, because I mean, it was just shaking his hand and watching him drive off was one of the coolest things I think I've ever got to do.
Yeah, it's those kind of stories that keep us going,
Absolutely.
especially when times get tough and we question whether or not we're making a difference. So,
And it happens.
and it does for sure. And it's part of the human experience. It's part of working in a very challenging field where we should question that. And I think it's healthy to question that, because that means if we're questioning it, we're trying to figure out what can we do better? What can we do to become more accessible and relatable? What can we do to reach out and help more people? So now I'm going to give you a chance to plug yourself. Tell individuals if they want to contact you, find out more about the services you provide, buy your group Home Accelerator book. What's the best way for them to do that?
My website, jimboad.com, just JIMBOAD.com. And that has everything on there. And you can actually go onto that and you can set up a 15-minute Zoom call with me. If you're really interested in jumping into group homes, I'll give you some great actionable things. I have nothing to pitch you, because if you're on there, you already know about my school group. And it's just, you'll get on that call, you'll get some clarity one way or the other, because this isn't a fit for everyone. It's a labor of love that does have the potential to make you more cash flow than you've ever made with any other real estate investment project. But if that's why you're doing it, you need to just be the investor and find yourself a good operator.
Absolutely.
And those are things that I can help you do as well. So just jimboad.com, and I'd love to connect with anybody and kind of see if this is a good fit for them.
You got it. I'll make sure your contact information gets in the episode notes when our podcast goes live on all my podcast platforms. Jim, thank you so much for a great conversation this evening. I enjoyed it. Hope we can do it again sometime.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. And with that, that's a wrap on another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, wishing you peace.